Oh, and here we are. It is finally happening. Dalton Brown. Mike Guido here with you. Dalton Brown to my, I guess this would be my left, I think. Okay, my right. We'll go by the viewer audience. We'll go that way. To my right, Dalton Brown. This is Bicoastal Baseball with Mike Guido and Dalton Brown. The inaugural episode of this podcast. This has been a podcast in the making that, listen, we've been working on this project. It feels like forever. We finally got some overlays made. We got, we're kind of ready to row here, Dalton. It's a pleasure to be here, man.
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited, and I think you and I are both tired of talking each other's ear off about baseball, and we're excited to have maybe a couple other people hear what we have to say because I know we're both chomping at the bit with a new season coming up here.
Well, yeah, I mean, hey, listen, one of the reasons why we started this project was because you and I both felt that there's not enough baseball talk in mainstream sports media, and there just isn't, right? Football rules everything, and especially today, by the way, where we couldn't have debuted on a worse day because now it's the first day of NFL free agency. The Dallas Cowboys are driving me absolutely nuts, so we couldn't have debuted on a worse day. But listen, baseball talk is finally here. The only exclusive baseball podcast on the GRYD network. Listen, Dalton, you have a deeper baseball background than me. You pitched at Duke. You've had former teammates that are now involved in Major League Baseball, whether they're players or front office executives or whoever. So I expect you to, bust my balls on a lot of this stuff. But, listen, tell the audience a little bit about your baseball background. Listen, I never went higher than varsity baseball in high school. I didn't play in college. Listen, my fastball topped out at 82. I was never going to go very far with that. So like I said, I think people are going to be more willing to listen to you on this with your baseball acumen.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how long it takes for me to drive the audience insane. But I gotta say, you cashed the under 2 minutes before Mike's first Cowboys reference on a baseball show. It didn't take very long, so good on you there.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I played ball at Duke. I was a pitcher. I pitched to an ERA in like the mid fives. Had some relief, some starts. Probably one of the least memorable career stat lines you'll ever see from a college baseball player, but still, it was a cool experience nonetheless. And I'm lifelong baseball fan, lifelong Dodger fan. Part of what this podcast is born of is the idea that I'm a huge Dodger guy. You're a big Yankee guy. We kind of bring two different perspectives. I'm excited to go at each other a little bit with that. And then you and I both, we were together at Gallery Sports. I've done a little bit of work for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, plenty of work for Betting Predators. And this is, I think this is one of probably the most fun project that I'm excited to get going on. Right. I mean, I think our plan more or less is to shoot the shit. So let's have some fun,
Yeah, it's going to be great, man, because listen, and you and I know each other pretty well. We worked at the illustrious Gallery Sports, if I do say so myself. But I was formerly of Sports Map Radio. I was a former NBA draft lead writer for offtheglassbasketball.com. But I do know baseball is my first love. It's, I have, I've delved into everything as my career has let me. But listen, so here's how we're going to start. Virtually every show here on the Bicoastal Baseball Podcast. As you can see, Dalton is wearing a Dodger hat, lifelong Dodger fan. I, on the other hand, I can't fit my headset on my head if I wear a hat because my head is that big. So just kind of know that I'm a Yankee fan, and that's just where we're going to end it right there. So we're going to kind of start by catering to both of our fan bases for a couple of minutes before we get into every show. So I figure since now what we're seeing in the news with the Yankees is I think every Yankee fan this morning woke up and had a mild heart attack finding out that Garrett Cole was suffering from an injury on his throwing elbow. Now, every report since that came out has been it's precautionary, right? it's precautionary. That doesn't look too serious. That's what they always say, right, Dalton? That's what they oh, hey, yeah, no, don't worry about it. It's just precautionary. They want things to happen. Listen, my heart is still in knots. It really is. So let me just say this. And we're going to talk about Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery in about 10 or 15 minutes. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Also, we'll talk about the MLB uniform crisis. Just how bad is it? Does it speak to a bigger problem in Major League Baseball? We'll touch on that. We got some winners and losers. We'll be previewing the American League West and the National League West prior to opening day. We'll be doing that for every division going forward. We have the West divisions today. Next week, we'll do Central, and the week after, we'll finish off with the East. And truth be told, we're going west to east because the dumb old Dodgers have opening day before everybody else does. So that's just what we have to do. Plus,
what a blessing for baseball fans getting to watch the Dodgers first.
That's hey, listen, you get to see Ohtani about a week earlier than everybody else. But and then stick around to the end of the show because we'll have Dalton's hot corner. We'll give you some future bets, try to put some money in your pocket. So let's begin today with my Yankees rant of the day. So here's the thing. Like I said, Garrett Cole looks like it's a right elbow injury. Listen, if he's out for the year, it's over, guys. It's over. The season is virtually over. And I know that seems a little bit like an overreaction, but let's be completely honest about where the Yankees are as their rotation is concerned, right? What we saw from Carlos Rodon last year was pitiful, right? Now he came into spring training. He looks like he's in much better shape this year than he was last year. He does. He looks slimmed down. His fastballs get a little bit more life on it. That's all fine and good. But again, question mark. Nestor Cortez, question mark. Marcus Stroman, I like the signing, but if he comes into the season as your number 2 starter, I'm sorry, it just isn't good enough. And especially in an American League East, which is going to be tough, especially with Baltimore, Toronto, and Tampa Bay, who just seemingly, with a $30 million payroll, seems to be good every single year. I don't understand it. I don't think anybody else in baseball really does. But look, there's a lot of positives to take away from where the Yankees are right now in spring training. There are, right? Juan Soto's hitting the piss out of the baseball. That's really great. Okay. Aaron Judge is Aaron Judge. And listen, there was some news that came out about Aaron Judge today. That's apparently, like Aaron Boone had already said, he's playing on Wednesday. He's fine. Giancarlo Stanton, that's a big one. And that's going to be something I want to track for the remainder of the season because he looks thin and mobile. He actually looks like, and these are using his own words, he actually looks like a baseball player again. So my heart is in knots right now, Dalton Brown. I'm praying to God that Garrett Cole is okay. And if he's not okay, I think it's going to urge them to go after somebody like Snell or somebody like Montgomery to try to recoup on this season for potentially the 1 year they have of Juan Soto. Again, we're going to talk about Snell and Montgomery later, but I'm praying to the high heavens, DB.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Cole thing is obviously a concern, right? I mean, that rotation really starts and ends with him. Now, look, if Rodon comes back and pitches like an ace, which we have seen him do at times in his career, I'm not saying you should count on that, but it's possible. It's also possible that they sign Snell and or Montgomery. And if you could end up in a position where Marcus Stroman's your number 4, and hey, if that's the case, that lineup is good enough to knock the ball around the park and keep them in ball games. I think the Yankees' ceiling is still pretty damn high if that's the way things end up looking. But that's a lot to ask, right? That's 2 more signings. I think both those guys can be had on bridge deals, so I think it would make some sense for the Yankees to do it. But really, you're hoping for the best with Garrett Cole. I think everybody in baseball is. He's obviously a special talent. He's as reliable as anybody is every 5th day when he takes the mound. So, I hope he's okay. This whole thing about it being a precautionary thing, there's a reason not everybody's getting MRIs on their elbow today, right? Like it's precautionary, but it's happening for a reason. I at this point, if you're getting an MRI on your elbow on March 11th, I'd be surprised if you make your opening day start. But hopefully he doesn't. Hopefully he doesn't miss a lot of time.
Yeah.
Um,
He's
so.
done for spring training. I mean, you'd have to presume that, right? I mean, there's no way, even if it comes back clean, you're not throwing him again in the spring.
That's the thing. Even if it comes back clean, they're shutting down his throwing program, right?
Yeah.
He's going to have to start the entire progression again. And hey, you know what? If that's the worst of what happens, I think you'd be happy with that at this point.
I'll take it over everything else.
Yeah.
I'll take it over the alternative than replacing the whole muscle. I think I'll take that.
Yeah.
Is he the best pitcher in baseball right now, you think, Dalton?
That's a tough one. I think you can definitely make the argument that he is. I think right now there's a lot of parity at the top of the best pitchers in baseball list, which I think is a lot of fun. I was a little bit surprised. MLB The Show 24 makes Spencer Strider the highest rated pitcher in baseball.
Uh-huh.
I think that's a little bit out there. I think in terms of consistent production, I'd put Garrett Cole probably a little bit above him in that conversation. But there are a bunch of guys I think you could make a good argument for there. We'll talk about a lot of these guys as we go along. But
yeah, right.
Yeah. I've got a Dodger rant for you here too, Mike. Obviously, this is how we're going to start every week. My Dodger rant is going to have significantly less panic to it. Fortunately for us, I don't think we have anybody going in for elbow MRIs today. Obviously the concerns with the Dodgers at the moment are not many. We're very lucky in that sense. Big news: the Dodgers this offseason, obviously signing Shohei Ohtani, signing Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Got to get used to saying that one fast. Going out and getting Teoscar Hernandez, I think, is an underrated move. Bringing back Clayton Kershaw. So look, there's a lot to be excited about with that roster. It goes without saying. It should be the best roster in baseball if they're healthy. That being said, and you're going to hear me say that, I'll say this a lot this year, Dave Roberts is one of the worst managers, if not the worst manager in baseball. I get it. They win the division almost every year. The regular season record is great. The guy shrivels up, doesn't know how to handle decisions when it comes time in October. Okay. We can have that discussion again in October, and I'm sure we will. You'll probably have me screaming into the camera a little bit at that point in time. But that's the obvious concern for me with the Dodgers, bigger than anything else, is can they make coherent decisions when it matters in October? Because we know they're going to be there. That's a luxury for us.
Yep.
I think a lot of people right now have concerns with the Dodgers infield defense. Gavin Lux has shown a good case of the yips in spring training, really struggling to make throws on the infield. The first sort of shoe to drop with that is that Mookie Betts appears to be the everyday shortstop going into the season, which Mookie Betts is a great athlete, but we'll see how that goes. You look around the infield, everybody except Freddie Freeman's playing more or less out of position. So, I think it could be a little bit of a circus at times. I think with Lux, you got to give the guy a little bit of time. This is why you get these reps in spring training. You give him time to get past it. I have a feeling he probably will. I'm actually more concerned about Muncy at third than I am Lux at second from a baseball from a defense perspective on the baseball field. So, I think the Dodgers' problems right now are what we might call champagne problems, right? It's who's the number 5 starter. It's, when are you getting Walker Buehler back? When are you getting Clayton Kershaw back? But, oh, by the way, in the meantime, your rotation is Yamamoto, Glasnow, Bobby Miller, James Paxton, and a flurry of other talented rookies who can, who are probably ready to fill middle of the rotation spots for most teams around the league. So
right.
A lot of good stuff for the Dodgers. I have my concerns about our ability to win when it matters, and I will all year. So,
well, hey, listen, look, there's a reason that Arizona was the representative of the National League last year, right? And it was 2 years in a row with the new playoff format, right? And that was a conversation in itself throughout the entire offseason because it was 2 years in a row where it just seemed like the National League was dominated by wild cards, and you had the Dodgers and the Atlanta Braves, who, quite frankly, I mean, even with the Dodgers' new acquisitions, I mean, Atlanta's roster is dumb. It's dumb. Like their lineup from top to bottom is ridiculous. And imagine if they get a healthy Chris Sale. If they get a healthy Chris Sale, that rotation's dumb. Like it's going to be Freaky Friday over there in Atlanta. Mookie Betts playing shortstop really stunned me a little bit. When I got that notification, I was just like, wow. I'm like, hold on a minute. So I knew that shortstop was at least somewhat of an iffy position for the Dodgers going in, right? Because you had options, right? Whether it was going to be Chris Taylor or whether it was going to be Gavin Lux or whether it was going to be whoever, right? I didn't think it was Mookie Betts because what you originally heard was from Dave Roberts was he's going to play second base every day. Now he's never going to play well, I shouldn't say never. He's not going to play second base to start the season. You talked about infield defense a little bit. Does that worry you a little bit?
I mean, I think it's a minor cause for concern, but the reality is that him preparing to play a season at second base and preparing to play a season at shortstop, most of those skills are pretty similar. Obviously you're moving different directions across the diamond. The throw's a little bit different, but I'm not so concerned with Mookie. Mookie's a great athlete. We've seen him play a decent amount of infield in a Dodger uniform, and he's usually looked pretty good. The reason for the move is Gavin Lux's inability to make throws coming off his injury. And moving him to second base obviously eases that concern a little bit, although the throws have still been shaky. We saw it again today in their spring training game against Cleveland. So, look, it's a concern. I'm not hitting the panic button on it yet. I think the Dodgers are very much in the market for middle infielders right now. A lot of, rumblings around a possible Willy Adames trade happening at some time. I think that would make quite a bit of sense. But I also think that, we got to extend Gavin Lux a little bit of grace, man. Guy just missed a full season on a torn ACL. He's just getting back in the swing of it. And, oh, by the way, he's been hitting. That looks pretty good. And that the most exciting thing right now, I mean, Shohei Ohtani's batting over 500 in spring training. Mookie's batting over 400 in spring training. Freddie's over 300 in spring training. I mean, the Death Star is coming together. We'll see, right? I mean, it's a long season, man. We got to see who stays healthy.
It is. It absolutely is. We'll take a dip into the comment section real quick. Our good buddy Alfred Parsard just said, give the Dodgers the ring already. I don't know that we're ready to do that yet. I think Dalton might be, but not me. Why is Mookie Betts at shortstop? Roberts baffled me on that one. Like Dalton had already alluded to, it's Gavin Lux. I mean, you're right. You have to extend some grace to the kid. But it did come as a surprise. It really did. All right. So let's move on to this. Let's go to the 1-2-3 inning. So here we go. First thing we got to go, our first out. Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery in free agency, I think, can be defined as what the ever-loving hell is going on. So it is now, let's see. It's March 11th, Dalton Brown. And we have two, I would say, I mean, depending on what you consider them, I think the bottom that you could consider them is very quality major league starting pitchers that were expected to get at least $100+ million contracts are now still on the market. Let's talk about Blake Snell first. Obviously what Blake Snell did last year, 14-9, 2.25 ERA. Listen, he made his starts last year. And again, the first half of the season for Blake Snell last year was really, really rough. And that really can't be ignored. But listen, he was healthy. He made 32 starts, 180 innings pitched, had 234 strikeouts to go along with that. He did walk 99 guys. That led the majors. Listen, so let me just start with this with Blake Snell. And you can tell me if you disagree, but I think Blake Snell's market for about 2 months has been very minuscule. And I think as the days go on, I'm proven more and more right. And I'm one to admit when I'm wrong about things. I've always been. My entire broadcasting career, I've always been the one that kind of just says, all right, whatever. I don't take too much pride in what I say. Well, I shouldn't say that. I do, but I don't hold it to, unreasonable expectations.
Right.
Listen, I said from the beginning, if you just break down the major leagues, and it was especially after Corbin Burns got traded to Baltimore, right? After Corbin Burns got traded to Baltimore, that his market shrunk even further. I really think that it's down to the Yankees and the Angels. And I know that everybody is going to say, oh, well, Mike, take off the Yankee hat. Well, hold on a minute. when for a second, and this is before Garrett Cole, I just want to make this clear. Before Garrett Cole, when have the Yankees themselves said that they're done? When have the Yankees themselves said that they're out? They never have, right? You've heard Heyman say it. You've heard Andy Martino say, like, it's really unlikely, right? Jack Curry, usually, and I have a ton of respect for all those guys. I really do. And especially Jack Curry. He's obviously one of the most reliable Yankee voices out there. Usually when he talks, you listen. That's just the kind of stuff that you're getting from him. He said, hey, it's very unlikely. Well, I would believe that that's what he's hearing, but I think the reason you're hearing that is because the entire league, again, it goes to say that he's still unsigned now, still expects him to get big money. And I just don't think that there's a place where he can get it from. I just don't. Like, everybody was talking about the Giants, right? Everybody said, oh, he would be a great fit for the Giants. And while that might be true, I can't imagine, first of all, Farhan Zaidi has already said, we're done. Like, we're pretty much done. He's ruled themselves out. That's the first thing. They signed Matt Chapman. That made a ton of sense, right? That was their last big signing. I don't think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, Dalton, but I don't think that they traded for Robbie Ray just so that they could add another contract that looks similar to Robbie Ray's for a guy who's similar in age, for a guy who's a similar pitcher. I don't think that they did that so that they could have two Robbie Rays on their team. I just don't. I don't buy that fact, right?
Well, so I think you're probably right. That being said, like, you have to take everything you hear with a grain of salt on this stuff, right? Like,
Sure.
I don't know. For me, and just speaking from the Dodgers' perspective, I think Blake Snell would make a lot of sense with the Giants. That rotation needs help. It's Logan Webb, and it's what are you going to get from Robbie Ray? And after that, I mean, what are you running out there, right? So that's a rotation that needs a lot of help.
It does. You're right, and we'll discuss that too later. I mean, we've got that preview coming up.
Yeah, and the Giants are going to play the Dodgers 12 times this year, and the key to beating the Dodgers a lot of times is you got to have a lot of left-handed pitching to be able to beat them in the regular season, right?
Yeah.
That tends to help. That being said, the Yankees seem like the most logical place that he would end up going at this point, especially with the Garrett Cole news today. I think the pressure is going to continue to mount there. I think that's the most likely result. The Angels thing, they keep coming out these rumors that that's where he wants to be.
I feel like that's pure speculation. It's just that, like, I don't remember hearing a single rumor, or I shouldn't even say a rumor, a single like concrete report that said the Angels were in.
Yeah, I mean, look, who knows, right? It's a little bit baffling to me that the Yankees are like the team that we keep just hearing connected to him, and it hasn't happened yet. And maybe the Yankees are just waiting for his price to come down for him to like kind of realize that, you know?
That's what I think.
You know, but I think the Angels wouldn't make any sense to me. That the Angels are a team now. Artie Moreno's too stubborn, but the Angels are a team that should be rebuilding. They won't, but they should. They probably never will, but they should.
That's true.
So yeah, I mean, look, Snell to the Yankees makes sense. Montgomery is a name I feel like we've heard connected to the Red Sox about 100 times.
Yeah.
But again, that's another guy that probably makes sense in the Yankees rotation. I know that, you know, given the fact that he's been there before, I know you sound pretty, you know, it sounds like it's pretty unlikely that reunion happens, but
yeah, I can't imagine.
The Yankees shouldn't shy away from any of that, you know?
Oh, right. Yeah, no, I agree. Listen, if you could get either one, I would take them. I think I'd be more willing on Snell just because the upside of what you're going to get with Snell is higher, but the floor is also lower, right? Like, that's also a very true thing. I just don't see where his market lies. I just don't like. First of all, you keep hearing, oh well, like you had that Bob Nightingale report, right? That said, oh, you got 4 new mystery teams that have come in. No, they didn't. Like, there's just, I don't buy it for a single second that there's like all of a sudden this massive influx of interest on March 10th or March 9th for Blake Snell. I just don't think that that's the case. And I know that like, I think it's pretty obvious to say that Scott Boras, for the majority of his clients, misread the market, right?
Yes,
He
100%.
misread the market. Cody Bellinger, we all thought going in, because Boras said so, right? We all thought going in that Cody Bellinger was going to get $200 million. He signs for 80 with the Cubs, right? Matt Chapman had turned down whatever $150 million extension with Toronto. He signs for literally $100 million less than that with San Francisco. Like, I first of all, I mean, if you're these guys, I mean, are you firing Scott Boras now? Like, this is unbelievable. It really, really is. There's no way that Blake Snell, and especially, and we'll talk about Montgomery in a minute, but there's no way that these guys are getting the money that they originally thought. It's not even going to come close to that, I don't think.
Well, I mean, so you're right, but nobody's going to fire Scott Boras for over this off. I think Scott Boras is going to have some adjusting to do in how he goes about his job, but
Mhm.
I think we're talking about years and years of reputation that the guy's built up. So I don't think you're going to see a flurry of signings, but I do think he's overplayed his hand over and over this offseason.
Right. No, I agree. I agree. So let's talk about Jordan Montgomery, because I think that this is a little bit different, right? Blake Snell, we've kind of established as a potential ace for a staff, right? Or at least, I mean, you would imagine that, he's a two-time Cy Young winner. Obviously, he's had seasons that are just unbelievably immaculate with a bunch of average in between. But Jordan Montgomery seems to be a little bit more steady, right? And I think that that's really the track record. 10 and 11 last year. He had a 3.2 ERA last year, but it dropped all the way down to 2.79 when he went to the Rangers. 32 starts. He's an absolute innings eater, 188 and 2/3 last year. Not big in strikeouts, only 166 Ks, 48 walks. But listen, this is a guy that I think really jumped on because of his postseason performance, right? Like that's really what put Jordan Montgomery in that class of, all right, this is a guy that could potentially get paid in an offseason because we know what he can give us during the regular season. But now that we know that he can handle himself in the postseason, and listen, he's pitched in New York and had success. That's a real thing. You smile at me all you want. That's a real thing. All right. Shake your head, whatever. Anyway, but listen, Jordan Montgomery's market, I actually think, is wider than Snell's. I just do. Like, I think more people are willing to say, all right, I could sacrifice, I could really put in somewhat of a financial commitment to Jordan Montgomery rather than, Blake Snell, if he's going to get hurt and he's going to give me a 4.5. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I
Jordan
mean, look,
Montgomery's going to be the innings guy, and he's going to give you a 3.5 virtually every year.
yeah, I mean, look, I think it's a matter of the investment level, right? I think some teams are in more of a position to chase upside. I think other teams are in more of a position to chase reliability. If you're a team that has some studs at the top of your rotation that you trust the upside of, maybe you're just
Yep.
looking for a reliable middle of the rotation guy like Montgomery who can flash higher than that. But if you're a team that like needs an ace, you should be taking shots with Snell.
Yeah.
Because he's shown that he can be that. Look, I mean, the thing with Snell is you're always playing with fire with him, right? I mean, I watched him pitch a lot in San Diego, and it's always a challenge for him getting through the fifth, getting through the sixth inning as the pitch count starts to rise. The walks put him in a position where even though he's not getting hit around a lot, when he does get touched, it can cause big problems in a hurry. So yeah, I mean, I think you're talking high risk, high reward with one. You're talking a little bit more reliability with the other. I think Snell's probably asking for a bit more money too, which is probably why you're hearing about a bigger market for Montgomery. But look, they're both going to sign, right? I mean, this isn't going to we're talking days or weeks now. They're both going to sign, and we'll see what ends up happening there.
All right. So let's play prediction time, right? So, what do you think? Snell, Montgomery, where do they land?
I think Snell Yankees. I think Montgomery Red Sox. I
Mm,
think the Red Sox have been kind of teasing their fans all off season and really for a couple years now, where it's like Red Sox were in on this player, Red Sox were in on this other player, and they don't sign there, right? Like
mhm.
I know Bryson at the GRYD Network has been driven nuts by that.
Yeah.
So I think this is where the Red Sox probably make their move. It's probably 2 to 3 year deal with a high annual value. I think you're going to see something similar for Snell, but it'll be a little bit higher. But I think they're both going to sign shorter deals than they want. They're both going to make a ton of money per year, and they'll both probably make their first start around April 15th. Because let's be honest, I don't know, like whatever this training camp is that Boris is hosting, like this idea that it can completely mimic spring training is not something I buy into. But I also think a month from now, this is not going to be as big of a story. It'll be over with.
Well, yeah, I think once they make their first start, it'll be fine, right?
Yeah.
Like, and especially if they make their first start and they look good, or at least not shitty, right? Like,
Yeah.
like, I think that's the thing. If they don't, give up 7 runs in the first inning, I think that they'll be fine. But I think I'm around the same as you. I don't know that I buy Montgomery to the Red Sox as much as a lot of people are saying. And it's simply because I just don't know that at this stage and over the track record of the past couple of years, I just don't know that the Red Sox are spending like that anymore. Like I at least right now, like, and you made a good point, right? Where it just seems like they're in on everybody, but they never actually pull the trigger. It's just like they're teasing their, listen, we have Bryson and Tim Barnard at our at our network are both the same way. They're just like, what the hell? Like, this is not the way the Red Sox do business, but apparently it is now. And I mean, even Craig Breslow has said, look, I can't really see it. I think everybody kind of chalked Montgomery up to the Rangers, but the Rangers have even said, yeah, I think we're done kind of big spending, because their TV deal apparently didn't go the way they wanted it to. So they don't have the money to spend. So I agree with you. I think Snell will end up with the Yankees eventually. I don't know what kind of deal that'll be, because I understand that they're over the luxury tax and the AAV and all that, whatever bullshit that, everybody wants to make excuses for. At the end of the day, listen, if Cole is hurt for a significant period of time, you have to fill that hole with somebody that's proven. So yeah. I think Snell eventually ends up in New York. Jordan Montgomery, I'm going to take a stab here. I think that there's a real good chance that he ends up in Philadelphia. I think the thing is that, you're looking at especially like I said, if he's commanding a little bit less money than what Snell is going to get, I think you could be looking at a rotation that fits a little bit more nicely at the end, where you've got Wheeler and you've got Nola at the top, and then you're kind of rounding out your playoff rotation with Montgomery and Ranger Suarez. I think that could be something there as well. So, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I could see Philly. I could see that making sense.
Yeah, no, they've definitely been rumored. So let's see. Let's see where we go from here. Okay, let's go to out number 2. The MLB uniform crisis. Dalton, is this a big deal? I mean, listen, I look at these and they're awful. They just, the quality looks terrible. It's just, I mean, you're seeing pictures of guys with their balls hanging out. Like, it's just, it looks terrible. Hey, what is going on here?
So I'm going to be honest, man. Like, I'm not pressing the panic button on the uniforms quite the way everyone is. The see-through pants thing, if you actually look at past uniforms, that's not that new. That is something that if you look at some past photo days in spring training, like, you kind of see it. So I think it's all going to die down with time. Now, I think the big problem I have is these like universally slanted and tiny name on back fonts that we're seeing around the league.
Right.
I think that sucks. I think probably what's going to happen is MLB doesn't want to admit they're wrong, so they won't until after this season, and then it'll go back to the way it was for next season. That's what I think we'll end up seeing here. Right. If we want to talk about the actual biggest travesty in uniforms across baseball, it is none other than in Washington, D.C., where the Nationals announced that they're no longer wearing that City Connect uniform with the cherry blossoms on it, or that they're retiring that. I think they're either retiring it after this year or they're not wearing it anymore.
Right.
That should be their full-time branding. They need to build a full uniform set around that. Their normal red, white is one of the dullest brands in baseball. So that's my big uniform take. Other than that, man, I'm kind of over the story, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'll be with you. I kind of am too. I do think the uniforms are terrible. I agree that the see-through pants is probably a bigger blown out issue than it actually is. Because I remember when I played, that was an issue that I had. And I know that my uniforms were probably not as of the same quality as major league uniforms, but at the same time, I don't think that you want baseball to remain a family program. I think that's really what we're kind of getting at here. But yeah, it's the names on the back for me. That's what it is. The uniforms just kind of look cheap. Like that's the thing that bothers me is like, this is now, this is the biggest brand in the world of baseball, right? Excluding the major leagues, whatever. Like, it's bigger than everything else. And yet you have now the cheapest looking jerseys. And I think it's actually kind of funny the way that you were speaking about this, because I think you and I are kind of in lockstep here. They won't fix this until after the season's over. They'll just be like, hey, well, listen, we tried to drop the major league logo down a little bit, which caused the letters to be small. I'm like, oh, but who okayed that decision? Like, that was just stupid. Who in the office was just like, oh, I think that's great. Like, it's terrible. And everybody says it's terrible. All right. So let's move on from that. All right. Third out here. I know we spent a while on out one, but third out here, let's close out the inning. Winners and losers of the offseason. So Dalton, what do you think? Obviously, I mean, we have Ohtani, we have Juan Soto, we have all these moves, especially that could change the course of the league for this coming year and for future years. But who do we think had a sneaky good offseason that we're not really talking about?
Well, I mean, I have some sneaky, I think a sneaky good offseason as a team overall. I think Arizona did some really nice things to kind of round out that lineup. I think Randall Grichuk is a nice bat for them. I mean, these aren't spectacular, right? But these are guys who can hit for some power. I think Randall Grichuk, Jock Peterson, Eugenio Suarez. I think it kind of helps round out an already growing lineup. I know you have a lot of positive things to say about Arizona as well. In terms of the best signing that I don't think is getting a lot of attention, at least in terms of like short-term win now, the Astros signing Josh Hader is kind of terrifying for the American.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a hell of a move, man. Adding him into what is already a really strong bullpen. I think there are rotation concerns a little bit in Houston. At least I have rotation concerns a little bit in Houston. We'll get to that. But I mean, between that lineup and what's at the back of that bullpen, that team's going to win a lot of games this year. And I think it kind of helped re-separate them from Texas and Seattle, in my opinion, in that division. If you want to talk about the biggest losers of the offseason, I'd go with the Marlins. That's a team that, like, in theory, should be building, right? Like, they should be adding talent. Instead, you're just kind of watching a few players walk. You're not signing any major leaguers. You're like maybe talking to JD Martinez, but who knows?
Right.
I don't really know what the plan is down there. I don't know if they're trying to like wait out the Braves and the Phillies until they're not contending again, or I don't know what the plan is. So, and then obviously the biggest move of the offseason is Ohtani. I don't need to expand on that. Everything about that. It's the biggest. I mean, the Soto move was an awesome one for the Yankees, but like the Ohtani move, it changes the, it changes the entire atmosphere of the game for the next decade. So,
no, it certainly does. It certainly does. You're 100% right about that. Listen, as a Yankee fan who has seen too many postseason losses to the Astros, when they signed Josh Hader, I was just like, come on, dude. Like, so now you're rolling with Ryan Presley and Josh Hader at the back end of the bullpen, right? If you want to add Brian Abreu to that mix, you can. And, you're dealing with a rotation now, again, that, I think most people can agree is pretty good. I mean, look, we'll talk about it a little bit later as well, but when they get Verlander back with Framber Valdez and Christian Javier and, whether or not they get Lance McCullers back late in the season, I mean, you're talking about, a pretty serious pitching staff. So here's the thing. I don't know. I agree with you. I think the Marlins really kind of botched it, right? I agree. This is a team that needed to build, right? This is a team that really needed to capitalize on what they saw, especially in the later half of last year, right after they brought in Jake Berger. And I mean, like, that was a really, I think catalyzing move for them. And they just kind of did nothing to expand on it.
Right.
There's a team I want to focus on. And again, it might be a fluke, and I might be crazy for saying this, but I think that there's a real chance that we see. I don't want to call it an explosion, but I do want to say a very serious improvement from the St. Louis Cardinals. I think that you could really see that, because one of the things that they did last year was, I mean, they were among the worst teams as far as starting pitching in the entire league. They were awful all year in the rotation. And I feel like in the offseason they weren't really talked about because they made all their moves early, right? Like they made all their moves in November. So like when they signed Sonny Gray, they signed Kyle Gibson, they signed Lance Lynn, even if 2 out of those 3 guys are middle of the rotation guys, because I think you and I can both agree that Sonny Gray is probably closer to a top end guy than a middle of the rotation guy. But that we'll get into that. But you just add more depth into that rotation. You add more arms into that rotation, right? That I think just gives you a longer window to win games, right? I don't think anybody really can doubt what they can do from an offensive perspective, right? The middle of their lineup is almost as good as, almost anybody in the league, right? Except for maybe the Dodgers and the Braves and maybe the Yankees at this point, right? Goldschmidt and Arenado and Contreras and Nolan Gorman and like you're dealing with guys that can just mash, right? So as far as I'm concerned, I think that you could see a big jump from, and especially from the pitiful year they put together last year. St. Louis, I think, could be a really, I don't want to say a threat, but a big time improvement in that division without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I think St. Louis, like a couple other teams that we'll talk about, is due some positive regression to the mean. I think that team was not as bad as their record suggested last year. I think they got really cold, got into some funks they couldn't get out of, and it was just a bad situation, And
Yep.
I think new manager there this year. I think things in St. Louis should improve. I also think that it's just that's an organization that tends to right the ship pretty quick.
Yeah.
Sonny Gray, I view as like a 2 guy, a 2.5 guy.
Mm-hmm.
The baseball savant profile for him, like the contact profile, it's not that great. It's a lot of middling stuff. The ground ball rate is always encouraging with him. Like he tends to keep the ball on the ground. I will say that like last year he was like, just from like statistically, he was awesome. I mean, 184 innings, 279 ERA. Whip under 1.2 for the second straight year. He has been good for Minnesota in terms of results. I have my concerns about, a 35-year-old with a middling contact profile who, his fastball is now around 93 on average, right? Like he's a guy who I think can be very good. I think St. Louis is a place that tends to get a good amount out of their pitching, so I can see it working. I hated the Lance Lynn signing. I don't understand what you're doing there. And I think you look outside of that, there are some real concerns in that rotation. But again, they're not in a very good division. You and I talked about this a little bit earlier. There's no reason that any team outside of maybe Pittsburgh can't win that division. So, but we'll talk more about that one next week.
Yeah. I mean, listen, common territory. I think for me with Lance Lynn, he was very good in St. Louis his first stint. Maybe you get some familiarity going back there. Maybe there's just a level of comfort that he gains going back into that rotation. Okay, so let's move to this. So let's preview these divisions, right? So this is something that I think you and I were both really looking forward to when we started this. Just because I'm a nerd. You know what I mean? I like to just look at stuff and be like, oh, this rotation's pretty good. All this lineup's pretty good. That's just what I do. So let's start. Let's start in the American League West. So here's what we were looking at last year, right? So these are their 2023 standings. Right next to the projected standings this coming year, brought in by Pacoda. So obviously we saw the Astros last year and the Texas Rangers as playoff teams, Seattle Mariners falling just short behind them, and then the kind of the bottom of the barrel with the Angels and the A's. As far as this year is concerned, they like the Astros just a little bit more, 95 and 67 to win the division. Texas with 87 wins, Seattle again kind of just behind them at 85. And then bottom of the barrel again with the Angels at 74 and 88. And then the A's, hey, listen, they're projecting a 14-game improvement from the Oakland A's, from their 50 wins last year to 64 wins this coming year. Listen, man, I'm kind of on the boat of I think the Astros really are the class of the division. I mean, if you look at it right here, I mean, this is what their lineup is looking like. Obviously, they're going to start out the year with Verlander and McCullers and Luis Garcia on the IL. But, I mean, as far as we're concerned, I mean, that lineup can compete with anybody in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Astros are the class of that division comfortably, as I see it. I mean, like the lineup is completely ridiculous. I mean, what they got out of Yainer Diaz in general, Jeremy Pena, a really solid young player. McCormick really came on as an offensive player. Abreu figured out as the season went along. I think we trust him to at least provide a decent floor at first base. The top of that lineup is ridiculous. That team is going to be they're going to score a ton of runs, especially in that ballpark. The rotation, I have some questions about. Framber Valdez, Christian Javier, these are guys who I think, you could make an argument are due for a little bit of negative regression. So I could see the rotation not being like the best in the division. I think Seattle probably has the best rotation in the division, but as they get healthier, eventually Verlander comes off. He's 41, so we'll see. But eventually he comes off the IL. I think you can trust him a bit. McCullers we'll see. Garcia we'll see. But Urquidy is a pretty reliable guy. Hunter Brown has shown flashes of looking like an ace. JP France has shown flashes of looking like a solid number 2, number 3 type starter. What works in their favor from a rotation perspective is depth. And they have a ridiculous back end of the bullpen. I mean, being able to go with a righty-lefty combo of Ryan Presley and Josh Hader at the back end of games with the way they're going to score runs is really going to make them a problem. And so I think the rotation is probably the weakest part of this team. But I think we're splitting hairs on a team that is more complete, I would argue, than really anybody in the American League. I also think, the other thing too, I think Houston's in a position where they're really able to let some of their younger guys kind of marinate and grow up. We've seen it with guys like Hunter Brown, right? They mixed him in as a reliever first. Now they're mixing him in more and more as a starter, and the stuff is ridiculous, right? You look at a guy like, Yordan Alvarez, I would argue he's the best hitter in baseball, but that's another guy that they were able to kind of ease on up as the team, continued to win ball games. Yeah, I think the Astros are right there with the Dodgers and Braves in terms of just being a consistent force, in that division. So the Pacoda projection on them, 95 games. We're talking a 5-game improvement from last year. If that's the number I'm dealt, I'd probably lean a little bit over. I think there may be a 97, 98 win type of team. A big part of that is I think the Rangers will start to regress a little bit in a negative fashion. I think Seattle has the pitching but doesn't have the offense. And I think the Angels are not going to be very good. You know what you're getting out of Oakland. I will say, though, I think Oakland is going to lose their position as the worst team in baseball and be replaced by another team in the NL West that we'll talk about in a moment here. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. That being said, look, as far as the Astros, in my mind, they're probably the class of the entire American League. I know you don't like hearing that, given what the Yankees have potential to be, especially if they can find some pitching. Taking a look at some comments here, I know Alfred had something to say about the uniforms. That he says that the uniforms have ironed-on letters and numbers, worse than replicas. Why move away from stitching? Yeah, man. I mean, it's a really questionable decision. Mike and I touched on it. I think that's a decision that they move on from after a year. A couple other comments here. Alfred makes a comment from earlier that Lux was the talk of the town when he first came up. I think he still can be. The offensive talent is certainly there, and we'll see if he can figure it out on defense. But yeah, going back to the Astros here, I think there's just a ton of depth with the pitching, a ton of depth with the hitting, and I think they probably improve their pitching as the year goes along.
Yeah, listen, I kind of am on the same boat. This is a very, this is a very good baseball team. It just is. And the fact that they were able to add Hader to this bullpen, it frightens me. It really does. So let's talk about the Rangers, right? So here's what we're looking at here. A lot of injuries to start the year. But look, I'm kind of under the impression that I think Texas is interesting because they're going to be leaning on a lot of guys, a lot of young players to perform, right? Obviously, Evan Carter, Josh Young, and Wyatt Langford are going to have to play a huge role for them. So, and again, a lot of what their rotation is banking on is let's be frank, Dalton. I mean, it's a bunch of old guys that, you're hoping to get maybe not prime numbers, but somewhat prime numbers from them at the top of their rotation when they return.
Yeah, the Rangers, I think, are I mentioned this briefly a moment ago. I think they're a bit of a regression candidate to the negative. I don't see this as a team that wins 90 games again. I think they could win 85. I don't quite see them as a team that wins 90 games again. I think that what troubles me for Texas is the pitching, like you said, right? You're not getting Scherzer or DeGrom back until the middle of summer, and you don't know what you're getting when those guys come back. So we'll see what that looks like. And outside of that, I mean, Eovaldi, again, this is another guy. He's 34, right? He's getting old.
Yeah, right.
It's so there are definite questions there. They need young guys to step up, but I think the Rangers are in kind of a nice spot, right? Where it's like they already banked the World Series. They have a lot of young guys coming up. They can see what they get with them, but they kind of remind me of the Diamondbacks a little bit, like maybe a little bit further ahead of the Diamondbacks in terms of the talent that they've amassed, but they kind of remind me of the Diamondbacks like a couple years in the future if the Diamondbacks get to where they want to be. So, it's a team that I think would be a fun team to be a fan of at the moment. I do think they regress a little bit, but there's a lot of fun. I mean, Wyatt Langford is destroying the ball in spring training.
Yeah, he's crazy.
Carter looks like the real deal. Josh Young looks like the real deal. So, and then eventually they'll get, Justin Foscue coming up. A lot of fun prospects coming up through that system. So
yeah, no, it is a fun team to watch. And again, I think that, they're one of those teams that I don't think that many people are buying into the whole, the idea of them going back and repeating what they did last year, but they're without a doubt going to remain competitive and, kind of fight for that division spot. I think that you and I can probably both agree that if there's anybody that's going to fight the Astros for the top of that division, it's going to be them. Or at least that's how I feel. Or maybe you feel that the Seattle Mariners have something to say about that. Listen, the thing that jumps out to me for Seattle is this rotation can be scary good. Like really, really scary good. I mean, we already know what Luis Castillo is as a big leaguer, and we already kind of know what Logan Gilbert is as a big leaguer. I mean, Luis Castillo is probably one of the top 10 starting pitchers in the game. Logan Gilbert is a very solid young pitcher that's got really high upside, and he's already proven himself in the big leagues to show what he can do. And then you look at these next four options, right? With George Kirby, Bryce Miller, Brian Wu, and Emerson Hancock. I mean, Kirby is a stud. I think we know that. Bryce Miller and Brian Wu.
Kirby's the best pitcher on that staff.
So let's kind of expand on them a little bit because Luis Castillo, I think, is one of the better pitchers in the game. And now you're saying that George Kirby might even be better than him.
I think George Kirby is better than him. The thing with George Kirby that's remarkable, he just doesn't walk anybody.
Yeah.
2.5% walk rate last year. And to do that while also being 88th percentile in chase, that tells me that the guy doesn't miss the zone much. And when he does, he's fooling guys.
Right.
George Kirby's ridiculous. He's a guy that in fantasy baseball, I can't recommend him enough because he's just going to eat innings. He's not going to, he's not having up games. He's a guy that I think is special. That rotation in general, though, I think is pretty special. George Kirby is great. You talked about Luis Castillo, and then even beyond those guys, like Logan Gilbert is a consistent like number 2 type starter. Bryce Miller has shown flashes. Brian Wu has shown flashes. Emerson Hancock is a big time pitching prospect. Robbie Ray was really an expendable asset for them, and they used him to get Mitch Haniger back, which could work pretty well. DeSclafani provides them a little bit of pitching depth, maybe if he can, if he ever comes back, I don't know, right? But that rotation, if it stays healthy, is going to make them a playoff team pretty comfortably, because the lineup, while it doesn't totally intimidate you, they've done some sneaky stuff to improve it. I think Luke Raley can mash a little bit. I'm a huge Jorge Polanco guy. As a switch hitting middle infielder, a guy who can play a few different positions, he's incredibly valuable. I think he's really underrated. Mitch Garver, we'll see what they get out of him, but there's certainly plenty of potential there.
Right.
Right now, actually, I think I have Seattle a little bit ahead of Texas, just because I think Seattle's coming into the year a lot healthier and a bit younger. Like, I think Seattle has more room to grow this season than Texas. Now we'll see when Texas starts getting their guys back, that could change. But I like this Seattle ball club. The question is going to be, can the pitching stay healthy and can they hit? If both those things happen, I could see them making things moderately interesting atop that division. But realistically, I think this team has a pretty good chance to comfortably be in the wild card conversation.
Yeah. All right, let's fast forward here to the NL West, because this is a division that I think is super interesting after the Dodgers. So, Dalton, I'm going to let you expand on this. Go right ahead.
Well, I mean, look, I've talked about the Dodgers a little bit. I bet them preseason. I bet them over 94.5 wins before they got Ohtani, because I just wasn't buying into the idea of them not getting Ohtani. Now, if you want that number in Vegas, you're looking at 104.5. I don't know how you can play that. That being said, I think they go over it. I think the Dodgers are going to be pretty ridiculous this year in the regular season, and they're always pretty damn good at winning in the regular season. We don't need to talk about anything beyond that quite yet. But behind them, I think something that's not getting talked about nearly enough is the fact that the San Diego Padres are probably going to slingshot a little bit back into contention. Everybody's hot on the D-backs. The Giants have made some sexy signings. The Padres last year, in terms of one-run games, just horrible luck. They couldn't buy a one-run game. I believe they have the worst record in the majors in one-run games last year. That, to me, is typically a sign that a team is going to push back the other way. I like the Padres if you can get their win total over anywhere around 80 to 82. I think that's probably worth taking a look at. They're probably my second best team in the NL West this season. I think they're the team that probably goes 87 and 75, something along those lines. They lost Snell. They lost Hader. They lost Soto. I get it. That's still a lineup that has Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., Xander Bogaerts, some promising players. Luis Campusano was awesome for them and made Austin Nola completely a guy they don't need. I think that rotation with Musgrove and Darvish, if Darvish can stay healthy, that's a pretty dynamite top 2 in a rotation. They've got some young guys coming up behind them that are really exciting. So I think Sandy, and I also want a couple of the bullpen additions like Yuki Matsui that they made from overseas. There's some pretty exciting potential there too. Do they have the talent they had last year? No, but I also don't think they're going to have last year's bad luck. I think that's probably a wild card team and better than some people are thinking. I think the Diamondbacks could see things start to kind of slide the other way. I still think Arizona's, probably an 83 to 85 win team. I think the same about San Francisco. I'll touch on Arizona first. I think awesome signings to improve the floor of that offense, right? Last year, you had way too much of guys like Nick Ahmed, Geraldo Perdomo, some of these guys seeing time in their lineup that are not quite replacement level major leaguers offensively. This year, you're seeing improvements. I think Jock Peterson in that ballpark can hit a ton of homers. I think Eugenio Suarez in that ballpark is going to hit a ton of homers. So I think they've raised the floor of their offense in a way that should keep them in the wild card conversation as well. And then you get to the Giants. I think the Giants – look, Jorge Soler is a guy I wanted the Dodgers to sign. I think Jorge Soler is a pretty special hitter who doesn't quite get the attention he deserves for being the hitter that he is. I think Matt Chapman is a excellent defensive third baseman who can hit a bit. He hits for power. I think there's a lot to like with the Chapman signing as well. I think you'll get Jung-Hoo Lee. We'll see, but I think he's probably going to be a well above replacement level player as well. So I think they've done some things to improve their offense. The problem I have in San Francisco is you play in about as much of a pitcher's park as there is in the bigs. And yet every move they're making is toward offensive firepower. Now, you need offensive firepower no matter what, but they do not have a rotation that's built for their ballpark. Logan Webb is solid. Logan Webb is somewhere between an ace and a number 2 guy. I think you can trust him. But after Logan Webb, what do you really think you're going to get out of Robbie Ray? Maybe he goes back to that form he had a few years ago, but realistically, I don't think you can rely on Robbie Ray to be more than a middle of the rotation guy, and I don't think I really trust him to stay healthy. And past him, I mean, who are we rolling out there? Keaton Wynn? Maybe Kyle Harrison starts to flash and show, what made him the prospect that he was. But, I don't see it with the rotation, and they're built in a ballpark that, it's a ballpark that's catered toward pitching. So just a weird team in San Francisco. And I think they're kind of going to be a weird team all year. I'll put it this way. I wouldn't be surprised if they went 75 and 87. I wouldn't be that surprised if they went 87 and 75. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. I think the NL West in general is not getting enough credit for the fact that there's only one team in this division that isn't trying to win now. And that team's the Colorado Rockies. This is something that I was planning on getting to in the hot corner, but I'll get to it now. Colorado is the bet to bet to finish the season with the worst record in baseball. That's how this is going to go. Oakland is still bad, but Oakland plays in the division that has the Angels. I think Oakland can steal maybe a couple wins around the American League because the floor of the American League is, I think, a little bit lower. So I think Oakland maybe improves to about 60 wins. I think Colorado doesn't get there. This team, that pitching staff, you're leaning on Cal Quantrill, Dakota Hudson. You're not going to get German Marquez back for a while. So, who are their best arms? Kyle Freeland, Ryan Feltner. I mean, these are the guys that you're trusting at Coors Field. And you're taking on teams all season long that are competing, right? I mean, the Dodgers, you deal with the Padres, you're dealing with the Giants, you're dealing with the D-backs. All 4 of those teams think that they're contenders this year, whether they are or not. All 4 of those teams are planning on being at least a wild card this year, whether they are or not. The Colorado Rockies will finish this season with the worst record in baseball, and I've seen odds on that plus 250, plus 350 throughout this offseason. You're looking for a good season-long bet on who the worst team in baseball is going to be. I hit it last year with Oakland. I think it's Colorado this year.
Could very easily be Colorado this year. They let's just take a look real quick too of what they're dealing with here. So you mentioned German Marquez before, but Antonio Sensatella is another guy that they're going to be missing in that rotation for the foreseeable future. I mean, if you look at this lineup, first of all, the Chris Bryant signing never made sense to me. I never understood when they did that years ago. I never understood why they were taking a stab at Chris Bryant. I think they might have something in Nolan Jones, but he's really the only guy that I see in that lineup with a bright future. Brendan Rodgers is Ryan McMahon is at this point. I'm with you. I don't think Colorado really has many building blocks here. If you take a look at, one of the teams that I think you were really that you were touching on that I'm really interested to get into really is the Giants. And again, we touched on them a little bit before because of them potentially being a destination for Snell. But this is a team where I 100% agree with you that they need starting pitching. I know that they're going to give this. I mean, when I heard this, right, and I think you and I could probably be in the same boat on this, when they said, we're going to try Jordan Hicks out as a starter,
I even forgot about that. I mean,
Like,
I
I'm like, what
remember
are
that
we?
they signed him, but I forgot they were going to start him. What are you doing? I mean,
I,
why mess with that?
I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. I mean, what he has consistently shown as a reliever in this league, and I get he's had his ups and downs, right? Like
Yeah,
he's had his command issues, but the guy throws 1,000 miles an hour. His stuff is absolutely insane. Like, I mean, he could close for them.
yeah.
Like, forget about anything. I mean, I know people like Camilo Doval a lot, and I do too.
Pair
But
them, right? Like,
yeah, right. I'm like, look, like he could be your closer. Like you're getting him for $44 million over 4 years. I mean, for a, I probably wouldn't call him a top flight closer, but for a potentially top flight closer, I mean that's a bargain. That's a bargain. So I don't know. It's very interesting. I'm very scared of what the Dodgers can give you. I just like look, and like I said, I don't know that I would construct the lineup the same way as this as well. I know that everybody is saying, you know what, it's Betts, Ohtani, Freeman. Um, I understand that. I don't know. This might be nitpicking on me, and I'm going to defer to you on this. But I feel like hitting Freeman second makes a little bit more sense, unless you really want to get because listen, I understand the analytic perspective of having theoretically, right? Theoretically having the best hitter in your lineup hitting second and having your third hitter be a power guy that's going to, I mean, because he's going to get up with nobody on and 2 outs about 60, what is it, 60, 62% of the time. He's going to get up with nobody on and 2 out. So you want somebody that has power in that spot to give you some production. But I don't know. Am I wrong to say that I kind of think that Freddie Freeman's a better hitter than Ohtani is? I mean, I just that's kind of how I view this.
so you could make an argument that Freddie Freeman is a better hitter than anybody in baseball, and I'd at least listen, right?
Absolutely, yeah, right,
The thing that is fun about the Dodgers this year
yeah,
is I think you could say that same sentence with any of those first three names,
yeah,
and nobody's gonna, people might disagree, but they're not gonna think you're nuts, right? I mean, here's what we know. Mookie Betts has been very vocal throughout his career. He wants to be a leadoff hitter, right? He wants to bat leadoff. Dodgers are more than happy to have him batting leadoff. The numbers show that he hits best when he's batting leadoff, so fine, right? I'm got no complaints. Mookie Betts is my leadoff hitter.
yeah,
As far as who bats second, I really don't. I don't think it matters, to be honest. But I would probably have Shohei batting second, if for no other reason than that I like his speed. I want him, and I want him getting more at bats. I like Freeman in spots where he has guys on base, right? I think what makes Freeman special is, yeah, he's a power bat, but that's not really his calling card, right?
right, yeah,
He's a guy that comes up with runners on and kind of serves the ball where he wants to.
right,
And so I think having Freeman batting behind both of them, I really like.
mhm,
And I think, yeah, we're talking 60% ish as far as the three hitter coming up with two out, nobody on. But if we're being honest with the Dodgers, we're probably looking at a little bit of a lower number there, right?
yeah,
And to me, Will Smith fits that profile in the four hole kind of perfectly of a guy that, like, okay, well, hey, we got 2 outs, maybe one on.
yeah,
We could use somebody to bop one here. Well, that's kind of Will Smith, right?
yeah,
Um, with the Dodgers lineup, I think what's really underrated about it, I think the Teoscar Hernandez signing is unbelievable. Uh, like, as far as like fitting a need, because that graphic you just showed doesn't have Chris Taylor on it, right? It doesn't
yep,
have Kike Hernandez on it. Like, and I'm not saying Kike Hernandez is some special player, but like, you're talking bench guys that like are pretty good athletes, can play all over the field.
yeah. It's real
And
depth. It's real versatile positional depth.
the thing that excites me too is I think you're going to see Andy Pajes at some point before long, and that kid can mash. Like, I
Yeah,
am excited to see his power at the big league level too. So,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a lot to be excited about there. What I like about the pitching side is I think we've gotten several of our younger starting pitching guys like a little bit of big league time, to where now, like, who your top four are going into the season, right? It's Yamamoto, Glass now, Bobby Miller, and James Paxton in some order. But you're
Yep.
getting Walker Buehler back at some point,
Yep.
probably maybe May. You're getting Kershaw back sometime in the middle of summer. And then they have a litany of dudes who were basically built out the best rotation you'll see at any AA place ever with guys like Landon Knack and Kyle Hurt and Nick Frasso. I mean, Kyle Hurt had a cup of coffee with the Dodgers last year. That kid is nasty. Landon Knack is nasty. Like these guys they have coming up through the minors and as pitching prospects are going to be a problem. So
Yeah.
I like the pitching depth this year. I think you have to have it. Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about the Dodgers roster, and I think there will be some small improvements made to it as the season goes along. But I could go on and on about it. It's just going to be a matter of like, can we be the team we're supposed to when the lights get bright? We'll see.
Yeah. Well, it turns out that we had a very Dodgers oriented show today. And I think we could, well, hey, listen, I think we couldn't expect anything less, with division previews and obviously your rant earlier on in the show. Okay. So let's just try to make this as simple as we can, right? And we didn't really do this at the beginning. So if you had to predict, right? Because we know what Pacoda says about both of these divisions, right?
Yeah.
So let's start off with the American League West real quick. We'll get into this and then we'll do your betting picks and then we'll get out of here. But as far as standing predictions, as for me, right? I think I'm right alongside Pacoda here in the American League. And I listen, I completely get what you're saying with Seattle's rotation. And listen, like I said, I don't doubt that could be one of the best rotations in the game this coming season. It absolutely could. I think there's just something about Texas, man. I like, and I know that that's kind of a cop out. There just seems to be something about Texas that I love. I don't know if it's just because I trust their lineup a little bit more. I know that Texas, towards the end of last year, couldn't close a game to save their life. I mean, they were giving games away with the back end of their bullpen. I understand all that. I think David Robertson solves a lot of those problems. But I don't know. I would probably go Houston, Texas, Seattle, Angels, A's in that division. What say you?
I mean, I don't hate it, right? I mean, look, I think we all agree it's Houston, those other two,
Yeah.
and then Angels, A's. I mean, a couple things that I think are really important to mention here. Number one, you guys are going to hear me say this all year, but I got to get it in episode 1. They are not the Los Angeles Angels. They are the Anaheim Angels. But I think as far as what we're seeing with Pacoda, I think the Angels are going to be worse than that says, to be honest with you. I think 75 and 80 or 74 and 88. I think that's bullish, man. I think that team is probably like a 68 win team. There's just not a lot there. Like if Trout isn't healthy all year, which like, why would we all of a sudden believe that he will be? And we'll get to that in a minute. But like that team's not good, man. They're like, they need Chase Silseth to be a guy. And like, maybe he is, but like, man, that rotation, like, Reed Detmers has shown flashes, but like, who do you trust there? Like,
I mean, listen, first of all, it's unbelievably left-handed dominant, this rotation, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like it's like virtually all left-handers. Reed Detmers is left-handed. Patrick Sandoval's left-handed. Tyler Anderson's left-handed. I mean, you're looking at virtually a rotation that is all left-handers, and then a lineup that has again, it's outside of Trout, who are you really relying on? I mean, listen, hometown discount for me with Logan O'Hoppe. I listen, like he's a Long Island kid. I root for Logan O'Hoppe. I think he's got a bright future in the game. I really do. But I don't expect him making a huge impact with the bat next year either.
Yeah.
It's just,
And he's another guy coming off a major injury too. So
that's true. Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, look, I think the Angels are bad. I think the A's are bad. I think the Angels and A's are both going to finish between 60 and 68 wins. I think the Rangers and Mariners both finished between 84 and 89 wins. I can see them going either way. I lean the Mariners, but I don't think there's anything wrong with leaning toward the Rangers. And I think the Astros finish between 95 and 100 and win the division comfortably, like they probably should have last year. So, yeah, I mean, that to me, that division's pretty academic. I think things are a little bit more interesting looking at the NL West from a standings perspective.
Yeah.
I will say I already went on a little bit of a rant here, right? I think people
right.
know where I stand. I think the Padres are due for positive regression. I think Diamondbacks are due for a little bit of negative regression. If you made me put them in order, I think Dodgers at the top, Rockies at the bottom is obvious. You could put the other three in any order, and I don't think you'd be wrong. My best guess is Dodgers, Padres, Diamondbacks, Giants. But I mean, I think legitimately the Padres, Giants, and Diamondbacks could all finish right at like 85 wins. I think that could legitimately happen. Now, it makes for a pretty good division because I think you could have 4 teams over 500. I think there's a decent chance of that. And a lot of that's just because the Rockies are going to be one of the worst teams in baseball history.
Yeah, they very easily could be. But yes, I agree. I think for me, it's very clear that the Dodgers are at the top of the division. I think it's very, it's more than possible that the Dodgers could be at the top of baseball. It's just that their roster is that good, and Ohtani makes their roster that much better. I think if Yamamoto turns out to be what everybody thinks that he is, the guy that apparently got the largest pitching contract ever without ever throwing a pitch in the major leagues, I think, if that guy turns out to be deserving of that contract, I think you're 100% right. They could definitely be at the top of baseball there. And I do kind of find it funny because they are the two teams that went to the World Series last year, but I feel very similarly about the Diamondbacks than I do about the Rangers. I just do. And again, I just think the Diamondbacks got better. Like what they did this offseason is they got better, right? They added bats where they needed bats, right? Guys like Eugenio Suarez is a power bat that they needed. Jock Peterson is another power bat that they needed. They needed a little bit more pop in that lineup. Like I said this pre-show, I don't know that Geraldo Perdomo is going to be their shortstop all year. I think eventually they're going to bring up Jordan Lawler, and he's going to be their full-time shortstop. That adds a little bit of something to their lineup as well. Adding Eduardo Rodriguez into that rotation, while it might not be the super splashy move that gets everybody excited, I think as far as innings eating and just having a guy in the middle of the rotation, I think that's what accomplishes that for them so that they don't have to go with an opener in game 4 of a playoff series. I think it gives them the ability to actually go with Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Eddie Rodriguez, and Brandon Pfaadt, if that's really what you wanted to do. So yeah, for me, I think I'm right along with Pacoda again. I think I'm right there with Dodgers, D-backs. I am not as high on the Padres as you are. I think based on what they did last year, right? And I understand that this is a team that, what was the number that you threw out? They were the team that they lost the most one-run games.
Worst record in baseball in one-run games. That's. I think if you historically throughout baseball history, and I don't know the numbers on this, but if you throughout baseball history bet the win total over the following season on the team that had the worst record in one-run games, I would be shocked if you weren't profitable historically doing that.
Well, hey, listen, that's definitely possible. I do think that Arizona is not considerably. I do think that Arizona is slightly better than San Francisco and San Diego. I think San Francisco and San Diego are about, I think they're very comparable to each other. I would probably take the Giants today over San Diego. So I would go Dodgers, D-backs, Giants, Padres, and Rockies to round out that division. Okay. So with that being said, let's close out the show today. We're running on an hour and 20 minutes. This is way longer than I think that we originally anticipated. But hey, whatever, stuff happens. So, all right, let's go to Dalton's Hot Corner. We do have some gambling picks. I know it's early. Obviously, regular season is a few weeks away. We'll have some more in-season stuff as that goes on. But we have some future bets, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I've got 4 player futures that they're all available at DraftKings. I haven't checked to see if the numbers are still available, but I'm not a market mover as much as I'd like to be. So there's a good chance they are. One note before I get into these, and I won't spend more than 3 or 4 minutes on this in total, but um, if you're betting season-long player props in any sport, you should only be betting unders.
Mm,
I'll say that one more time. You should only be betting unders because at the end of the day, right, there's always the risk of injury. It's a purely asymmetric risk that's not, it's almost never factored into the number. Last season, I made the largest bet I've made my entire life on Byron Buxton under 30 and a half home runs. It's a number that for him to go over it, he would have needed to hit his career high in homers. And Byron Buxton doesn't play full seasons, right? Like
yep.
any kind of injury, and you've already cashed the under if he gets injured at any point in time. If he stays healthy all year, you're like 53% to the under. You take that bet. So with that in mind, I've got 4 player props. As you might imagine, they are all unders going into this season. I'll start with 2 that I feel pretty good about, and then I'll start with 2 that I feel great about. Austin Riley under 106 and a half RBIs. RBIs by season for Austin Riley in his career: 49, 27, 107, 93, 97. He would need to match his career high to go over this number. Austin Riley's been an established big leaguer for long enough now that we've seen 3 full seasons, and his average in RBIs over those 3 full seasons is a little bit shy of 100. He's a great player, right? But we're just betting against a guy matching his career high. That's all we're doing. And guess what? If he gets injured at any point all season, you've won the bet, right? When you see numbers like this that a guy's hit once in his last 5 years, you just bet the under because there's a chance he gets hurt. I'm not rooting for it. I'm not rooting for any of these guys to get hurt. But the reality is if any of these guys get hurt, we're winning money. So that's the first one. That theme's going to be similar throughout what we put out here. Okay. Second one, Fernando Tatis Jr. under 102 and a half RBIs.
Oh,
Again,
smash that.
Again, we're betting on players that people think are like sexy, are stars that people want to bet overs on, right? RBIs by season for Fernando Tatis Jr. 53, 45, 97, 78. Now, he is more than capable in terms of talent of going over this number. I don't think I have to tell anybody that, but this is kind of a show me bet, right? Like, this is a guy who there's a pretty good chance he bats leadoff most of the year. They've put, in spring training, he's been leadoff sometimes, not other times, but there's a pretty good chance he bats leadoff a lot, meaning the only way he gets RBIs in his first at bat of a game is if he homers. Now, he'll hit his share of homers, but like, this is not going to be an RBI guy. This is going to be a run scored guy. This is going to be, an extra base hits type guy. And like, has he stayed healthy consistently throughout his career? Not at all, right? So like, we're looking for a guy to shatter his career high in RBIs here. It's a short career. I get it. Any one of these 4 bets, these are all guys capable of making me look stupid. I'm happy to look stupid if it comes down to it, right? But again, any kind of injury, we've cashed this bet. And even if he stays healthy all year, I think we have a 55% chance of cashing this bet, if not better. So that's another one. Tatis under 102 and a half. You have any thoughts on these so far, Mike? I don't want to sit here.
I agree. I think I agree with both. Like I said, as soon as you said the Tatis bet, I said I would smash that under. I agree with you. Listen, especially you bring up a good point. If he's going to be hitting leadoff for a majority of the season, even if he gets 500 at bats, right? Even if he gets 500 at bats and he hits his 35 homers, how many of those homers are going to be, solo shots, right?
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Like, he would have to drive in 80, 90 more runs independent of leadoff homers. So I think that's pretty, I think that's a pretty safe bet. Plus, I think the bottom, we could even look at it here. The bottom of this Padres lineup could be scary bad. Like, it could be very, very bad. So, especially if you're dealing with guys at the bottom of the lineup that are not going to be getting on base all that often, if he's hitting leadoff, the RBI numbers just are not going to be there. So I'm 100% with you on that.
Yeah, and again, I can't stress enough the fact that, like, if you hear any of these numbers and you think, 50-50, you got to remember you're thinking 50-50 if he stays healthy.
Yeah.
And it's like, at best, what percentage of Major League Baseball players get through a full season healthy? Maybe 60. I don't know the number on that, right?
Right.
Like, like you're dealing already with the possibility that guys miss time. So like even if you think these have a 50-50 shot, your odds are probably more like 55
Yeah.
that they go under. And they're
Yeah.
designed that way. Go ahead.
It's really tough to play a full season in Major League Baseball, but I'm with you. I mean, he had in 2021 he played 130 games, right? In 2023 he didn't play in 2022 because of the PEDs and the injury, but and then 141 in 2023. So again, I'm with you. That what was his number? What was it? 102? Is that what?
102 and a half. 2023 he played 141 games. And he had 78 RBIs.
Yeah,
That's a leadoff hitter. That's
yeah,
what that
right.
is. You know, so two more to get to here. I don't want to take up all night with them, but this is one I love. Randy Arozarena under 23 and a half home runs. Okay. 3 straight fully healthy seasons now for Randy Arozarena. I love seeing a guy healthy. Home run totals per season 20, 20, 23 in 3 straight fully healthy seasons. Again, we're looking at a situation here where I don't know why, if he's healthy all year, why would you project this total over the highest number we've seen the last 3 years? Why? I like this Rays lineup isn't going to be better this year than it was last year, right? I mean, last year I'd say they achieved their ceiling. So, you know, I don't think I don't think pitchers are going to be more inclined to pitch to him this year. I'm just not seeing why you would set this number above his career high. Like I think this is one where if he's healthy all season, we're already 55 to 60% of him not going over this number, maybe better.
Yeah.
And then God forbid the guy gets hurt. Again, I'm never rooting for it, but like this is, I mean, like you can bet this at minus 110 last I saw at DraftKings to go under here. So you need this bet to be right 52.8% of the time. Like this bet's right 65% of the time as I see it. So look, these are not fun to bet player prop unders for the full season, right? Like they're not sexy bets. They're not fun bets. Every night when you check the box score, you're like, oh God, I hope he didn't homer. And then every once in a while he's going to hit 2 homers and you're going to think you're an idiot.
Oh,
And you
no.
might look like an idiot on some of these, but I'm telling you, like this is how you make money full season in the bigs. You just bet the unders on players that people don't want to bet unders on.
Listen, Arozarena, as great of a player as he is, I mean, obviously the numbers speak for themselves, but again, I think it's a lot of glamour that comes with that, right? It's a lot of like because he's got I think would they be banking on people saying, oh, Arozarena, he's a stud. Of course he's going to hit more than 23 and a half or whatever it is. And, I don't know. The way that I see it is it's just going to be like they look at the name of the player and they just kind of buy into oh yeah, and dude, he's a 30 home run guy, when in reality he's a 20 home run guy.
Yeah. He's been a 21. He's been a 20 home run guy. Yeah. All right, this last one is to me the easiest bet of these 4, and I'll give you 2 parts of it. But Mike Trout under 93 and a half RBIs. Okay. Mike Trout is capable of driving in 1 million runs, right? I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you Mike Trout's bad. Yeah. Okay. But Mike Trout's getting into his low to mid 30s now. He's getting older. The last time Mike Trout logged 500 at-bats in a season was 2016. That's 8 years ago. Mike Trout's last 5 seasons by RBIs, 104, 46, 18, 80, 44. And guess what's different about that Angels lineup this year? There's no Shohei Ohtani walking through that door. That means more walks for Mike Trout. That means fewer runners on base for Mike Trout to drive in. Even if Mike Trout is healthy all season, it's not remotely inconceivable that he stays under this number. Now, 93 and a half is a little bit lower, but he hasn't gone over this number in 4 years. And why would we all of a sudden think he's going to stay healthy? I don't buy it. He's not going to get as many pitches to hit. He's going to get walked more. Ohtani's not walking through that door. They're not going to be runners on base. And if he stays healthy, I think we're rolling the dice. If he doesn't stay healthy, which, by the way, he hasn't done in 8 years, then we should be pretty comfortable here. I would also play his home runs under 30 and a half as well.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think Mike Trout is Obviously he's getting older, but like you said, more importantly, the Angels lineup is just simply getting worse. Like it's just not a productive lineup. He's very easily the best player in that lineup, which means theoretically, right, the guy's going to see nothing to hit. And even with somebody like Anthony Rendon hitting behind him, I mean, how much of a threat is Anthony Rendon anymore?
He's not. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he's not. Like, as far as I'm concerned, he doesn't want to be on the field. So.
That's exactly right. And that probably makes it even worse for Trout based on what Rendon was talking about this year. Well, this guy's not even trying. You know what I mean? So I'm with you 100%. And, I actually am a little disappointed because I was kind of expecting to disagree with you a little bit more on some of these things, but no, because listen, nothing can be worse. I shouldn't say nothing, but there are a lot of things that I would hope doesn't happen in the future. I really hope that I don't agree with all of your bets in the future, but I'm sure I won't. But yeah, I agree 100% with everything. Okay, so real quick for the audience again, Dalton, just for just so that people can get another rundown. You want to just quickly run down what your picks are?
Yep. Austin Riley under 106.5 RBIs. Fernando Tatis Jr. under 102.5 RBIs. Randy Arozarena under 23.5 homers. And Mike Trout under 93.5 RBIs. These are all big name players that people are going to want to bet overs on. We are not going to do that. And I would caution the audience against ever betting a full season player prop over. These things are designed to bait you into doing that. And it's just not the profitable way to bet it because you already have a certain percentage chance working against you that the guy's not healthy. And as soon as he's not healthy, the under cashes. So there you go.
That's why you listen to Dalton and Brown about betting information. Okay. That'll do it for episode 1. That was a lot of fun. I think we'll do even better next time, honestly, because
we'll definitely make it shorter.
We'll definitely make it shorter. Yeah, we're running out about an hour and a half right now. It's over than what we thought. But see, that's what happens. Episode 1, you got to shake off the rust. That's all this says. But all right, as for Dalton Brown, I'm Mike Guido. This is the Bicoastal Baseball Podcast exclusively on the GRYD Network. We'll see you next week.
Go Dodgers.